As part of commemorations for the 150th anniversary of Loyola University Chicago's founding, the Sesquicentennial Scholars created the Loyola at 150 Student Life Timeline Project to shine a light on students' college experiences and to explore how these experiences have changed since 1870. Using the rich resources of the University Archives and Special Collections and the Women and Leadership Archives, the scholars collaborated to create an interactive website where users can explore the past and gain insights into the present. What was the research process like?
I worked in the University Archives and Special Collections at Loyola, and my process was looking through newspapers, digital resources, lots of pictures, and other physical items within the archives in order to understand what students found important over the many years that Loyola has been in existence, what activities they were involved in that were unique and or regular events, how they interacted with the school as far as what their opinions were and their needs were over time, and how they were involved in the city and other events in the city and other events in the world around them, and trying to piece together the interesting events with good media that would interest a varied audience.
For myself, I got involved with research after we had to move online thanks to the pandemic. So I was looking at what digitized collections I could find in Preservica, which is this platform that the school uses to aggregate items from various archives, and the University and Marketing Collections Photo Gallery and archive.org, where you have a lot of old Loyola yearbooks to see what kinds of events could be found and placed onto the timeline, especially for the later decades.
So when I started out at the Women in Leadership Archives, my role was to really get a sense of Mundelein College student history. Since they were right next to Loyola's Lakeshore campus, there was a lot of overlap and interaction throughout both schools' histories. So after we moved online, that expanded to also include supporting university archives research and creating the documents online so that we could continue to maintain all of that information about them that we keep in the archives. Which event stood out the most to you and why?
One of the events that kind of persisted the longest, especially in the 20th century, was pushball. Pushball was a game played between the freshman and the sophomore classes, and the goal was to get this enormous ball to the other team's side, and it was pretty crazy and fun. But the whole motivation was that if the freshmen won, they got to stop having to wear beanies all over campus, which they hated. So they had a great motivation to win, and they almost always did. The sophomores very rarely prevailed. And then on a more serious note, the school's involvement with World War II was pretty extensive. Of course, the sheer number of young men that entered the war was very large. And they also taught classes to lay people about interesting things about the war, like maps and things of that nature. They also provided dental and medical school degrees at a shorter, more concentrated rate so that they could send doctors and nurses and dentists overseas as rapidly as possible to help soldiers, along with just a ton of fundraising. They bought ambulances for the war effort and a lot of other things. So it was very interesting to see all the bits and pieces that went into their involvement in World War II.
For myself, I was very fascinated by the presence of pets on campus and particularly interested in the turtle derbies, which was a nationwide phenomenon that was taking place in the 1950s. So the turtle derby in general is a kind of race where turtles race against one another, and Loyola and Mundelein both held their own turtle derbies actually, and they, I think, got the turtles from soup companies. So the turtles would be squaring off against one another, and the events seem to have been public. So sometimes members of the public, when they were walking by the school, they'll see students crowded around a bunch of turtles just racing against one another. So I think that would have presented a very interesting sight. But it also seemed the turtles' lives were a bit dangerous because they might have been kept outdoors. And then sometimes when there was a flood, the turtles would be swept away. And we have an article in the Skyscraper where some turtles were swept away in the flood of 1954. So that was really interesting to read about. On a more serious note, I was also really interested to learn about the Foucault pendulum. So the Foucault pendulum is something that's used to measure the Earth's rotation. And there was one installed at Mundelein College in an empty elevator shaft they had in June 1938. And this was suggested by a physics professor, Sister Mary Therese Langerbeck. And this pendulum was huge. It was 9 stories tall. It had 30-pound bob. And the students actually broadcast their findings on the Earth's rotation via the school's radio station. They determined the gravitational constant for Chicago, and that happened in October 1938. And this Foucault pendulum was used for 2 decades until 1958, when the Museum of Science and Industry unveiled its own Foucault pendulum.
One of the events that really stood out to me in the Skyscraper, the Mundelein College student newspaper, there was a bit of a controversy over a new dance called the twist. It appears a group of students has sort of taken over the student lounge, so to speak, for twisting with loud music. And the students who were in there playing cards were not so pleased. So they wrote letters to the editor back and forth, either attacking or in defense of their dance. Some felt it was inappropriate or that no one looked good doing it, too suggestive. So someone actually suggested that maybe girls should practice before they do the twist in the lounge. It was very contentious. And then on a more serious note, but in the same vein, I really loved seeing the way that music and performance played a role in student life throughout the school's history as a real constant. And it really brought the sort of past student life to life for me. You could see all these different musical ensembles, both big ones, official ones, and small ones that played in local eateries and performance venues. And even students would put together their own bands for their own dances. So there was a lot of fun detail to see in that. And it was really neat to see the way it changed over time as well. What was the most challenging part of the process for you?
Well, I think we all agree that the pandemic has been the most challenging part of this for all of us. For me, it was really difficult because the UASC has a massive collection of information, so very little of it has been able to be digitized. And so from home, it was hard to do a lot of the research that I needed to do. But luckily, I did find things to do, and I was allowed to start coming back to the archives on a limited basis in October, and that's been a huge help.
Yeah, I echo what Jennifer said about the pandemic. That was challenging. And for myself, it was really working with Omeka S, the platform that we used to create the website, that was especially challenging. So Omeka S is pretty easy to use, but it has its own idea on how to show information, and we had our own ideas on how we wanted information to be shown. So it's a kind of negotiation with Omeka S in terms of code to get it to show information in a way that we felt would be more intuitive for users to use.
I guess from the research point of view as well, one of the challenges we had throughout the whole time was that it's fairly easy for an institution to record its own history, but perhaps less so for an institution to record the student experience. Because simply students, there's so many, they turn over every year. So in fact, there's not as much as the institutional history. And so it was a challenge trying to sort of find the pieces of that in the archives when there is so much, and to be able to find the story in that as well. What was the most exciting part of the process for you?
For me, the whole process has been very enjoyable. I really loved seeing how students have evolved yet stayed the same, how their interests have changed, and just kind of the story of that history over time is really, really interesting to me. Lots of really cool materials in the archives. So that's been fun. But the most exciting part is seeing it done. It's been a really long process, and I think it's just great to see the whole thing completed.
Yeah, definitely echo what Jennifer said. We have been working on this project for almost 2 years, since December 2019. So it's very exciting to see it completed. For myself, I really liked the usability tests we did with potential users of the site. So a usability test is kind of a process where we invite people to test out our first draft of the website and give us comments on what they think about the website, what could be improved, so on and so forth. And I think that really drove home the point for me that, oh, this is a website that is actually going to be used by people. It's not a project that we were just seeing inside our head. So it's very exciting to see how people were reacting to the project. And they actually pointed out very useful things that had completely escaped our attention. So actually, in the first draft of this website, we had no site banner, and we had been staring at this website for a really long time, and it just never occurred to us that we had no site banner. So I really liked that process of this project.
For me, the most exciting thing was being able to use the exhibit function in Omeka in order to sort of tell stories that didn't lend themselves to the sort of linear timeline storytelling. So either things that were centered around a very particular sort of time period, like World War II, where there was so much that really wouldn't fit well in the timeline. And then as well as themes that it was a much longer story that told itself better altogether. So for instance, performance and theater and music. So for me, that was a lot of fun to be able to try and make the best use of the media we had, which were really cool, and sort of tell that story in a deeper way as well. So that's all we've got for now, but there's so much that we couldn't fit in our time today. So you can check out the Loyola at 150 Student Life Timeline at the link in the description below, explore the timelines and exhibits, and if you follow both of our archives on social media, you'll hear all about our future projects. Thanks for watching.